At UMC, access to your health care is only a call away. Dial 74-NURSE for free, instant medical advice from experienced and trusted UMC nurses, 24 hours a day. Learn more at umchealthsystem.com.
And welcome in everyone to RedRaiders.com. I'm Zach Long with Don Williams and Krista Pirtle. This is the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show. We take a look at Texas Tech versus Iowa State this week. And speaking of our good friend in the lands of pigs and red bridges, Iowa State's got to be in a cranky mood, guys. Not a good situation last week against Texas. Paul Rhodes about us. And for a guy who makes a habit of being fired up, Don, he was extraordinarily fired up in that post-game press conference after that loss to Texas.
Was he ever? And, that made me wonder, how will the Iowa State Cyclones react this week? And I asked Cliff Kingsbury and Sonny Cumbie, and both of them said that they thought Iowa State would be very motivated, and Sonny Cumbie said he thought Iowa State would be really ticked off. And so, you can go one way or the other after you lose a one-point game with some controversial circumstances. You can be either really charged up to get back out there and get back on track, or it can knock you for a loop for a while, and you can have a hangover effect.
Yeah, Krista, you really don't know how they're going to respond. I mean, they had a rough start to the year. Quite frankly, it was starting to look like I don't know if they were going to win a football game. That's how bad they started, but motivation never a factor with a Paul Rhodes coach team.
Not exactly. In the last 3 years, Iowa State has beaten a top 25 team on the road, so Tech really needs to be careful and not take this team lightly and really go to work on Saturday.
Or you'll have an instance like 2011, which I know is becoming a broken record. We keep mentioning it, but it was one of those key moments in Texas Tech recent football history where it was a huge slap in the face for Texas Tech and really the start of a slide towards the back half of the Tuberville era, if we can even call it an era, Don, since it was, what,
yeah, I mean,
3 seasons?
That was probably coming off the biggest win of the Tommy Tuberville era when they went up to Oklahoma and beat the Sooners in Norman, which nobody really expected, and everyone then got geared up. That was a 5-2 team at that time. Everyone thought, okay, things are going to finish up strong, and they lost the last 5 games of that season. That 5-game losing streak started courtesy of the Cyclones right here in Lubbock.
So you can see why we are a little bit weary of Iowa State as journalists because of what they're capable of doing. Now on to a more positive note, guys. The 54-16 win over Kansas last week in Lawrence started slow, not to anyone's surprise, against Kansas. They've done that numerous times, but they really closed well over the last half of that game. A very dominant performance, a lot of positives to be taken out from that. Krista, what sticks out to you from that win over Kansas?
I'm going to go with the fake punt that the Jayhawks really didn't play very well. Coach Kingsbury has said throughout the season that he's been very proud of his special team units. He said on Monday that when you watch the tape and watch how they performed, it's a pretty clean film. So I really think that that was a big moment for the special teams to get the team in really good field position.
And when I watched film and they ran that play and I saw the game rebroadcast and you see Charlie Wise with both arms extended staring out onto the field, you know it wasn't his call, Don. What stuck out to you in addition to the fake punt against Kansas?
I think the key moment for me was Texas Tech defense bearing down when there was an opportunity for this game to get away from the Red Raiders. Kansas came out, comes out strong, 10 points on its first 2 possessions, and then at the juncture that's 10-0, Kansas with an opportunity to have momentum and get what crowd that there was into the game. Texas Tech defense after that, the next 7 series gave up 1 first down. 7 series, they got 4 3-and-outs, an interception, a turnover on downs, and allowed only 1 first down. And so that allowed the offense to go from being trailing 10-0 to leading 30-10. And we've said it, it's been a consistent theme the first month of the season. This defense has given Texas Tech a chance to win every game so far when you're not knowing exactly what you're going to get from the offense. And, Cliff Kingsbury even goes so far as to say the defense has carried them. And I think what they did at that juncture when they were down 10 points early last Saturday really set a tone for that game.
Prevented maybe a 20-0 deficit like they got themselves in a couple years ago up there at Lawrence. Speaking of the defensive success, the reason it's so key, the quarterback situation for Texas Tech, they've got the freshman in there. Michael Brewer's been hurt. Now you're facing a situation, if you're Cliff Kingsbury sitting there getting the arsenal ready for Saturday, for as much as we know Mayfield's injury is not season-ending. He could be ready to go, guys. If you're Cliff Kingsbury and you're sitting there and you've got this arsenal now, what direction do you go with Texas Tech's quarterback? I'll start with you, Krista.
I'm going to go with Davis Webb. He has played so far this season. When he came in against TCU, Texas State, and Kansas, he played well, scored some touchdowns. Right now he's 36 of 70 for 550 total yards. I think that he could be good. I'm not sure what Brewer's status is right now, but I really think that Davis Webb can come in, get his first start, and really get things moving for the Tech offense.
Don, you could have worse problems than choosing between what looks like on paper 3 very productive quarterbacks. What direction do you go?
Well, I think Chris is probably right. If you ask me to guess, I would expect Davis Webb to be the starter on Saturday. However, if I have my druthers and you give me the choice, I'd say it's very important that this team gets Michael Brewer back as quickly as possible. And there's an opportunity that it could be this Saturday because he practiced last week. He has been in pads again this week, and we saw him get his first little bit of game action on Saturday up at Kansas. I think where this team is right now, the most important thing that they need from a quarterback is taking care of the football. We've seen Davis Webb limited action in 4 games. He's already had two interception games, and then Baker Mayfield has had the 5 interceptions, and he's also fumbled the ball 4 times, even though Tech has retrieved all 4 of those. I think they can benefit from what little experience Michael Brewer has in that game action that he got last year. You know, ball security, interceptions, that sort of thing was not really an issue with Michael. And of course, he's chomping at the bit to have this job, and I'm sure he's probably behind the scenes really telling Cliff, hey, I'm ready, get me out there.
And one of the things that we've constantly hit on when talking about the quarterback situation all through the fall and now into the season, the weaponry they have around them. They have a ton of weapons to choose from, and none bigger right now, both physically and in terms of just a boost, than Jace Amaro. The tight end wide receiver is a pain to cover. He is a big, destructive wide receiver that moves over the middle. He is a huge matchup problem for any team they face. And this week, Jace really spoke about not only the fact that he's a matchup problem, but when you focus on him, you free up a whole bunch of other dimensions within Texas Tech's offense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Coach Kingsbury's always had a big part of me in the passing game and the running game, and Baker's done a great job of getting me the ball. When I'm open, I know sometimes it looks forced upon, but some of those plays are designed to go to me, and that was his first read, and he felt like I could catch the ball, and I know regardless of whether there's a couple guys on me, I'm expecting to make the play. Even if the ball's down to me, I'm expecting to catch the ball. So I take a lot of pride in that them throwing me the ball no matter what, regardless of the coverage, regardless of the situation. This past game, they really kind of tried playing me, not actually letting me just go inside or outside. They double team me with 2 safeties at sometimes, especially when we went 2-by-2. They're really trying to take the long ball away from me. That's kind of why I've just been able to catch 5-yard balls and seeing what I can do after that. But they're really not allowing me to go too deep on them. They're trying to just keep everything in front of them, and they're throwing a lot of bracket coverage at me, and it really opened up Eric last game, Eric and Jakeem, and they did a great job of adjusting to that man-to-man side on the left side, and if that's what it takes, I'm just gonna. And especially since we're running the ball a little better now, that's going to help me with the coverages that they throw at me, and hopefully they'll start falling away from that.
As you can see, Amaro very well aware of what he brings to the Texas Tech offense. And Don, you've been around the game a long time, especially covering Texas Tech. Where does this kid rank in terms of weaponry that this team has had over the past few years?
Well, in terms of great tight ends, Texas had 1 All-American there in Andre Tillman, and that was way back in the early 70s on those great Jim Carlin teams. I'd say Jace Amaro probably physically is kind of a similar talent. Andre Tillman's a guy who went on and played 7 years in the NFL, and I think Jace has the physical potential to play several years in the league. And, of course, right now he's certainly getting an opportunity to show it. He's making up for a heck of a lot of lost time because 2 years ago he was kind of a bit player as a true freshman. Then last year he missed half the season injured. Now he's getting, he has a 4-game streak where he's caught 8, 9, 9, and 9 passes. And it seems like sometimes, particularly in the case of Baker Mayfield, it's like, Jace is open, I'm going to throw it to him. Jace is not open, I'm going to throw it to him anyway.
Krista, definitely a good weapon to have if you're a young developing quarterback.
Absolutely, and he's there. He can make the catches if he's open or not. And like Charlie Weiss said a couple weeks ago, and Paul Rhodes said this week, he is a matchup nightmare. They don't know if they want to put a linebacker on him, a cornerback, a safety. What are they going to do? Because they do have so many other options around him.
Yeah, you focus on him, and pretty soon you're going to see 11 or 18 going down the sideline because you left them in a one-on-one matchup. Definitely a problem for opposing defensive coordinators. Onward, more specifically to this game on Saturday between Texas Tech and Iowa State, the old early morning a.m. breakfast kickoff on 11 a.m., guys. And we look at the keys to the game inside of this. Iowa State, they got a ton of momentum back last week. They lost to Texas, but you can tell this is a team capable of beating anybody in the Big 12 Conference if you take them lightly. A key to the game for you, Krista.
I think they've got to pressure the quarterback. Iowa State quarterback Sam Richardson, he's got a bum ankle. He won't be fully healthy until probably after the season is what Coach Rhodes said. And Iowa State is number 119th in the country in protecting its quarterback, allowing 4 sacks a game. So I really think that Kerry Hyder said that the line is in competition with the linebackers to see who can get the most sacks, and I think they can really rack some up this week.
For me, it's the quarterback for Texas Tech. They have got to get honed in on who the kid is and stick with them. If they start Mayfield or Webb early in this game and things don't go well, you've got to turn to Michael Brewer and get this thing figured out. They are not going to get away with this against West Virginia. That's a tougher game, and then after that, the gauntlet is on. This team needs to figure out who their quarterback is, and more importantly with this game, if you mess around and do not get off to a good start against Iowa State, you're going to see things go bad really fast. And to me, the key for Texas Tech to start well, have their quarterback come out and take control and win that job. Don, what's the key for you?
I think key for me is for Texas Tech defensively to limit the big plays that Iowa State has. I mean, you're about a 15, 16-point favorite in this game. You're at home. You're going to have a big crowd behind you. You want to make Iowa State work its way down the field to get points against you. The Cyclones, at the beginning of the season, I sat here and said it looks like they're struggling offensively. They didn't look very good offensively the first 2 games, but they have a couple of guys, a couple of newcomers, young guys who are weapons for this team. In the running back, Aaron Wimberly, who's a JUCO transfer, who has a couple of 100-yard games now. Then the wide receiver, Quentin Bundridge, who caught the 97-yard touchdown pass against Texas. So this team has so far 7 plays of 30 yards or longer. That has not been an issue for the Texas Tech defense so far this year, and I think one of the keys to me to keep you from being vulnerable to an upset is not let them hit you with 50-yard touchdown pass, 75-yard touchdown run, that sort of thing.
I'm sure Matt Wallerstadt will be preaching assignment discipline all week when they're preparing for Iowa State, because that's the key thing with the read option. They will kill you if you make a mistake in a read or do not have your angles or your lanes set up properly when you're defending them. There's a look at the keys of the game for Texas Tech versus Iowa State. We'll be right back here on the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show with more of the Red Raiders and the Cyclones. For complete coverage of Texas Tech football on your iPad, download the Game Day app from AJ Media. Full coverage of each game with in-depth stories and videos. Find rosters, depth charts, and stats to get you ready each week. Also, recruiting coverage from Reckham 24/7. The Game Day app from AJ Media. And welcome back, everyone, to the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show. Looking at, of course, Texas Tech and Iowa State right now, though we will take a break from that game and look at the Big 12 slate this week. Not a ton of games, but we got some dandies and a lot of good storylines coming up. We'll start first, guys, with Kansas at TCU. Both these teams struggling immensely. Things are not all happy in the land of frogs. Gary Patterson this week, very hard on himself and his team. They're off to a 2-3 start. Not what they expected to be when they were one of those preseason Big 12 conference favorites, Krista.
Yeah, I did drink the purple Kool-Aid at the beginning of the season, kind of taking that back, but I do think that TCU pulls this out. It's in Fort Worth. They did just lose a close one to the Sooners, so I really think that Patterson really gets his team to get going and get the win. Yeah,
I'm with TCU here. God, Kansas's offense is horrible at times. Last week they folded against Texas Tech. I really think their effort decreased that much. I do not trust them to score enough to beat TCU, and I think Trevon Boykin is just getting better and better every week in his role. TCU will roll in that game big time. Don, your thoughts?
We've talked about how Iowa State, where's their mentality going to be coming off that tough loss to Texas? So you can say the same thing about TCU. Man, it's got to be a real downer for the Frogs to play as well as they did, particularly defensively up at Oklahoma last week, and then get no no payoff for it. However, good thing for TCU is with Kansas, you can probably have a little bit of a hangover and still win. So I got the Horned Frogs here. I'm thinking maybe Gary Patterson doesn't have to chew out quite as many TCU players as we saw him chew out.
I thought the guy was going to have
Saturday.
a heart attack.
Jeez, his face was so red.
I mean, I thought the guy was going to keel over. So hopefully for his health, TCU will win that game. Up next, the big, scary Baylor Bears. They go visit Grandpa Bill up in Manhattan, Kansas. Baylor versus Kansas State, Krista.
Since the 2010 win against Texas, Baylor has not won a Big 12 road game since then, and also Kansas State should have some bad blood about last year's beatdown in Waco, but I do think that Baylor pulls this one out.
Got to watch Bill Snyder. They will not lose because of a lack of game plan. He will have a plan together to defend Baylor. He's been joking all week about them scoring 100 points and leaving after the first snap. All a ruse. Don't buy into it. The key for me, though, is you're going to have to outscore Baylor even if your defense limits them. I do not think Daniel Sams and Kansas State can score at that dynamic level. I call a little closer than people think here. Baylor's still going to score a lot of points, going to win the game, Don.
Yeah, I'm the same way you are. I think it'll be kind of a 49-31, 52-35 kind of game. Baylor, they won't get 70 this week. But, you know, they've never won in Kansas State, but I guess there's got to be a first time, and this probably looks like as good an opportunity as any for the Bears to win in Manhattan.
Now, Don, you know, I've been around Texas Tech culture now going on. This is my 6th season covering Texas Tech, and the thing I really started to develop early on, I knew A&M was a rivalry when I got down here because everyone told me that. But the thing that I've quietly and, you know, not quietly at times started to figure out is Tech fans do not like Baylor. They actually have a real problem with Baylor, and the better Baylor gets, the more crankiness I hear from Texas Tech fans. And, you know, I don't need convincing. I can hate anything if you just give me a few reasons. So I understand why Tech may not like Baylor. But right now, the fact remains, this team is looking absolutely frightening right now, and I think they're the favorite in the Big 12 Conference until someone proves them wrong. When that time comes that they are proved wrong, who do you see capable of beating this Baylor team? Chris, I'll start with you.
A lot of people are saying November 7th, Oklahoma, that's going to be like the Big 12 championship game between Oklahoma and Baylor. I think Baylor can beat themselves if they do not prepare for these other games that are not seen as high profile. Yes, they have Texas in Waco, they have Oklahoma in Waco, they're closing out Floyd Casey Stadium, but if the Bears are not careful, do not game plan, do not follow assignments on defense, they could lose.
Don, where do you see a tripping point for Baylor?
Well, you know, I don't know a specific place. I do think obviously Oklahoma is probably the most logical, particularly with the way the Sooners are playing defense this year. You're going to need a really good defensive team to slow the Baylor offense. However, I don't know if it's necessarily that game. I just think they'll lose somewhere along the way, just because it's difficult to go beat every team in the Big 12. I don't care, even in a year like this when there doesn't seem to be a dominant, a great team, like, you know, a great Oklahoma team, a great Texas team. You still got to go win Big 12 games on the road, and that's difficult to do. So I think, you know, somebody will sneak up and bite them somewhere.
Don, they play Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State in back-to-back weeks. The loss is going to come somewhere in there, and for me, what it takes to beat Baylor is this. You have to limit their offense. You're not going to stop their offense, but then subversely, your offense has to be able to outscore them. Oklahoma has a fantastic defense. I do not doubt that one iota. I do, however, doubt their offensive abilities to get into a shootout. I don't know if they can do that. Right now on paper, the team best equipped to beat Baylor, in my opinion, is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Their defense keeps maturing, keeps getting better, and they've got a real nasty attitude. If they can limit Baylor, Texas Tech has the offensive weaponry to outshoot them if you get into that situation. So for me right now, I'm not trying to, you know, play the angle here of pleasing Texas Tech fans, but on paper, Texas Tech might be the team to end that Baylor run in the Big 12 Conference.
If they get the quarterback play, which again, they'll have another, 4 or 5 games or so to try to get a little more consistency at that position.
First up, though, they got to get past Kansas State this weekend in Manhattan. Now on to the last Big 12 game to pick, and oh boy, this is a doozy, folks. Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River rivalry. Aren't you proud of me for saying that so flawlessly? Don, this is a big boy. Not only is this a huge game in terms of the Big 12 Conference, but right now, OU and that program, they're smelling blood. They could put an end to Mac Brown.
Yeah, they could. I mean, knock him off, 4 times in a row and finish off Mac in Austin. The flip side of that, though, is the Longhorns, even for the struggles that they've had so far this year, they're still sitting right there at the top in the Big 12 standings. They're still playing for realistically Big 12 Conference championship. So it's high stakes, like it always is. The Sooners, though, I think, particularly with the way the defense is playing so far, I got OU winning, taking down the Longhorns again.
That's the key for me. The game is a complete and total war between these two teams. They hate each other. The stakes are maybe higher this year than they've ever been because of the uncertainty with the Texas coaching situation. For me, though, Don, you're dead on. Oklahoma defense is the key in this one. Texas and Case McCoy, I have no trust in for them to outscore Oklahoma when it comes down to it. I think Oklahoma rolls in this one, and they roll to the point to where the Boo Birds in Austin become an all-time high, looking for Mac Brown to step aside. Krista?
Yep, step away from your fried foods. Oklahoma's going to roll. Tickets are like $80, so get out there, watch the Sooners beat Texas.
That should be a big one, and of course, Texas is 2-0. They know what they're playing for in that game, but that could be the start of what could be a downward spiral for Texas. In the back half of the season, that's a look at the Big 12 slate with a little sidetrack there to talk about some of that more in depth. Now let's focus our attention on the game at hand. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. kickoff. Iowa State visits the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This is a game on paper. I guess you could say Tech should win, but we're all much smarter than that. We know what that Iowa State team is capable of. Krista, how do you see this game playing out?
31-13 Texas Tech. I do think the Iowa State defense is good. They haven't allowed a team to score over 40 points in a few years now, so I do think that Texas Tech won't score as many points as like 50 like they did last week, but Texas Tech will get things done. For me,
you're dead on with the Iowa State's defense. They're very good, but they lost two of the best linebackers in the history of the Big 12 Conference, in my opinion. Now, his Knott's little brother is starting for Iowa State, but that's not that duo of Jake Knott and A.J. Klein. I think that's the key for me. I just don't think they can contain Texas Tech in this offensive firepower. And Tech's defense has not given me a reason to doubt them. I just can't see Iowa State scoring much more than 20 points. And that, even with a quarterback struggle, if they struggle, I still think Tech's going to score enough points to get past this one. I do see it lower scoring, though, Don. I'm going to go 31-17 Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think we kind of see a similar game. I have written down here 30-20, but you know what? I'm going to revise it. I'm going to say 37-21. I'll give the Red Raiders. So that's 4 touchdowns for Texas Tech. Ryan Buston has an off week this week. He only kicks 3 field goals
only
as opposed
3.
to 4, which he's had each of the last 2 games. So 37 for Texas Tech, 21 for Iowa State, and what should be, again, I think a pretty entertaining game out at Jones Stadium.
And Don, what did you tell me this week? Ryan Buston, is he leading the nation in scoring? Is that what you told me?
Yeah, I mean 13 out of 15 in field goals. He leads the nation in field goals attempted, field goals per game. If he keeps up this rate, he actually is right on pace for the NCAA record, or at least the FBS record, which is 31 field goals in a season. Georgia kicker had that back in 2003, and he's actually ahead of the pace for points by a kicker, which Quinn Sharp from OSU set last year. Scored 12 points a game. Ryan Buston's averaging 12.6 a game.
And Krista, everyone knows when they get into that brutal stretch of the schedule, that's a nice weapon to have in your corner as a consistent field goal kicker.
It is, and Kingsbury said again on Monday that he doesn't like to send him in all the time there, but he is great. He can produce the points when he needs to, and he is a great asset for the Red Raiders.
There is a look at the game between Texas Tech and Iowa State, and that's also going to wrap up this edition of the UMC Health System AJ Media pregame show. A lot of other good coverage online right now. Get on there and check out a marathon episode of Don versus Twitter this week. He takes on a ton of your questions. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, with a topics discussion on Texas Tech and NCAA football with Krista Pirtle. And, of course, we have game day this week. Don, I think you're working on a pretty good feature for that for the folks that are from the Raiders.
Yeah, I talked to guys like Sonny Cumbie, Eric Morris, Mike Smith, asked them, how's your life different now as your late 20s, early 30s as a Texas Tech coach versus what it was when you were growing up in Shallowater in Eric Moore's case, and Lubbock in the case of Mike Smith, and Kevin Curtis. What can you not do now that you used to do back when you were a teenager or a Texas Tech player?
That should be highly entertaining, to say the least. And, of course, you can find that and the rest of our coverage of Texas Tech football over at LubbockOnline.com and RedRaiders.com. Until that time, though, we will bid you farewell. We'll see you after the game on Saturday, Texas Tech versus Iowa State.